Hey there, how y'all doing this fine morning? This is Data coming to you from my backyard at my homestead in the western suburbs of Chicago. I'm back off trail again, obviously. I finished the Smokies up about a week ago and then came home, and I'll get into some details about that. But yay, I am done with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And whew, man, is that a hike. Took me 7 days overall. I did 4 days the first time, and then I went back down and did the other 3, the northern part from Newfound Gap to Standing Bear, actually past Davenport Gap, which is where the park ends, and then on out to Standing Bear Hostel. And it was a good hike. I learned a lot on this hike, but I am done with the Smokies, and I'm glad to be done with that dang park, that's for sure. This time I was planning to hike through to Hot Springs, but I changed my mind after 3 days. The 3 days in the park, the first 2 days I got rained on pretty heavily both days. So I got to Standing Bear, and they've been hit by a really bad flood about 6 weeks ago. I guess 7 weeks probably now, and they're still recovering. And I mean, it was a flood like Helene hit the rest of the trail. Standing Bear told me they were spared of that. But this flood, just water was several feet deep throughout the whole Hostel area. There's a big creek that runs through it, and it overflowed dramatically. There's video actually up on YouTube on other people's channels about their flood from 6 weeks ago. You should go look at it and have some sympathy. They got hit pretty hard. So I came home after the 3 days instead of going on to Hot Springs because I was rained on pretty heavily the first 2 days. Now the third day, I got partly dried out, and then I got to Standing Bear and was going to use their dryer to dry out the rest of the way. But their dryer is one of the things that was damaged in the flood. So I hung my clothes out, and they got dried basically enough to hike in, except that the weather forecast had heavy rain that night, which we had, and then also even heavier rain was going to be on the first of my 2 days hiking up to Hot Springs. And I really just decided after 2 out of 3 days in the park being completely soaked in rain, I didn't want to get soaked for my first day out hiking and then hike wet all the way into Hot Springs again. I just had it. So I went ahead and came home. And so the first lesson I learned is that as a section hiker, I still have to plan to allow for 0 days. Not that I'll use them all of the time, but in this case, I could have taken a 0 day at Standing Bear, and then the days beyond that were dry, and I could have hiked on to Hot Springs, except that I had obligations back here in the Chicago area that I didn't want to miss out on. And so I went ahead, I had to go ahead and come home. So in the future, I'll allow for a 0 day on a hike that's a week or 2 weeks long, but if I don't need it, I just won't take it. And I'll plan on trying to not take it, and I won't plan on exactly when it'll be, and that way if I get hit by bad weather or I have an equipment failure or whatever, I'll have a little bit of leeway in the schedule so that I'll be able to take a 0 day if needed, but not have to. So that was the first lesson I learned. So the second lesson I learned had to do with hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and people thinking about section hiking or through hiking the Smokies might want to think about this and factor it into their planning. I learned that of the 72 miles of the Appalachian Trail that run through the crest of the mountains in the Smokies, about 33 of those miles are shared equestrian paths along the AT. Most of those are from Peck's Corner to Davenport Gap on the northern section of the trail, but in total it's about 45% of the AT through the Smokies. And the reason that matters is the Smokies is a really challenging hike. For reasons of altitude, but also difficulty of the terrain, except that on the shared equestrian paths, for reasons that I've highlighted in other videos, the portions that are shared equestrian trails are graded much more smoothly. They don't have hardly any big rock scrambles at all because horses couldn't get over those, and the forest is pruned back on the sides and on the top better. So it's much easier hike, the 33 miles that are shared equestrian trails. And if I had realized that going in, I could have understood that the southern half, mostly the southern half of the Appalachian Trail through the Smokies, is much more difficult than the northern half. Might be why one part took me 4 days, the other part took me 3 days, but I didn't even know that. Had I known, So folks, you could make note of that and factor that into your planning for future hikers of the Appalachian Trail through the Smokies. The third thing that I learned on this hike was I tried using an umbrella, and that was a big hit. That worked really well, better than I thought it would. I had always thought they were kind of gimmicky, but I bought one this time. I bought the Z-Pax ultralight hiking umbrella. I also got the little attachment to put it on my shoulder strap, and the umbrella plus the shoulder strap worked. But I also have a set of shock cords on each side, one up at the top of the shoulder straps, one down by my hip pockets. And so I put them there originally to put my hiking poles in when I don't need my trekking poles on a trail. But I found I could also put the umbrella there, which meant that if I wasn't sure whether or not it was going to rain, I could put the umbrella on a shoulder strap. And this happened on day 2, actually. And if it begins to rain, I can really easily take that umbrella out, pop it in its little mount on my shoulder strap, and keep right on hiking. So as of this hike, even though I came off before getting to my end goal of Hot Springs, I'm at 480 plus miles total on the AT, and I'm happy with that. It's not quite a quarter of the way, but I'm getting there. I have 2 sets of hikes planned over the next month or so. The first one isn't an Appalachian Trail hike or an Ice Age Trail hike. It's actually a vacation hiking, a set of trails with Mrs. Data that we're going to go do around Bryson City in another week or so. We're going to use Gorgeous Stays as kind of a base camp, and we're going to hike some of the trails that I found, that I learned about while I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, but that aren't a part of the AT. And then while we're in Bryson City, we're also going to do some regular vacationing things. I think we may ride the Great Smoky Mountains railroad route out of Bryson City. We're probably also going to go down to Franklin and maybe up to Wyabald for a short hike. So I'll try to put some of that up on this channel, I think, as we take time to film it while we're on our vacation. And then lastly, the second hike that I have planned for the next month or so is to hike a section of the Appalachian Trail again, hopefully to get myself up over 550, maybe even 600 miles. That will mean I will have thus far, by the end of 2025, I will have hiked at least 25, maybe 30% of the trail. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to hike this time. It'll be in the southern half of the Appalachian Trail. It's probably going to be somewhere in Virginia to knock off 100 miles or so of that area in Virginia that I had not yet hiked. But I'll have more information on that later. I'm still kind of working on the plan, so I'm not even exactly sure where I'm going to be hiking. So in the meantime, I hope y'all are having a good end of the summer. Fall has finally settled in to the Midwest, so hopefully we'll get to see some color change in the leaves when we go down to the Smokies this time, and then also the October hike I'm going to take. I'm sure the forest will be in full fall splendor then. So I hope y'all are having a nice fall, and in the meantime, until I post something else up here, I just wanted to say happy trails to each of you. So when I got out of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, I stopped at the Standing Bear Hostel, and because Standing Bear has a mixed reputation online, which even the owner, Maria, joked about with me when I was there, I just thought I'd say a couple of words, really based on my experience and maybe kind of in their defense, but I had a pretty good time there. It's a hostel. It's an real, authentic Appalachian Trail hostel. That is to say, it is not a 3-star hotel. It is much nicer than staying in the shelters. It is as nice as some of the other hostels I've stayed in. It's not glamping, but it wasn't very expensive either. It was $40. I got a private room in the treehouse, which had a heater had I needed it, and a fan since I didn't, and a bunch of windows. It had a really nice, in a separate building, there's a really nice shower, which is probably, I don't know, 4 feet by 4 feet, plenty of hot water, place next to the shower to set all my stuff down while I showered. I mean, it would have been nice had the dryer worked, but again, they've just been through a flood, so I'm going to give them a little bit of slack on that. They had a really good resupply, which I bought a few things in. So I drink near beer, or fake beer, non-alcoholic beer when I'm on trail. And they had some good non-alcoholic beer. I had that. Made myself some chili in their kitchen. They have a big full-service outdoor kitchen that's open 24/7. You can go in there and cook your own stuff whenever you want, skillets and all that. They have a laundry facility where you can wash stuff by hand and then put it in the dryer when the dryer works. I washed stuff. I had to dry it by hanging it up, which worked okay. I did have to use a portalet. Normally they have a privy. Maria told me they're actually working on getting flush toilets and a new full-size bathroom area. And I kind of chuckled at that because I don't really need that. I use a privy when I'm hiking on the AT all of the time. I don't mind using one at a hostel, especially when I get a private room, hot shower, place to cook a hot meal, really good Wi-Fi. And then probably best of all is since I changed my plan at the last minute, like the morning I got up, they thought I was going to hike out that morning, and I had changed my mind because of all the rain that night and seeing what the forecast was for that day, because again, they had really good Wi-Fi, so I could check the weather report. I asked Maria and Ian and a couple of other people if I could get a ride up to Hot Springs to get my truck and end my hike, and on really virtually no notice, one of the guys who lives in the area and was helping them out recover from the flood, named Jason gave me a ride all the way up to Hot Springs for a reasonable fee. Not a lot, really, given the distance. Not any more than any other shuttle driver would have charged me, on almost no notice. You know, just, sure, I'll give you a ride, hop in the truck. So, I had a pretty good time at Standing Bear, and I found them to be really good, solid, genuine people. One of the guys who was working there actually was in town running an errand and found the apples on sale somewhere and brought back a whole bag of apples and just gave me a couple of them. So I've said on other videos, and other people say this a lot, that one of the best things about hiking the Appalachian Trail for me are the people that you meet. And that does mean other hikers and friends I've made like Late Start and other folks along the way. But it also means the people who run hostels and hotels and drive shuttle services and work in the parks and all of that kind of stuff. And to me, the people who work at Standing Bear were every bit as cool, every bit as nice as anyone else I've met on trail. And maybe one of the big differences at Standing Bear was these are actually people who live in the area, and many of them have lived in the area for a fairly long time. And they know everyone up and down the area. They know the trail like the back of their hands. And I got really good advice for them, which did help me make up my mind to go in. Honestly, they reminded me of my people in Indiana who I grew up with. So, I joked with one of them because they were all there on a Saturday morning, whole crew, like 3 different crews, probably 6 or 7 people. By 8 o'clock on that Saturday morning, they were up working, trying to make up the repairs and fix things that had been damaged by that flood. And I joked with one of them. I said, well, I thought it was a weekend. Thought maybe you'd have the day off or the weekend off. And they just laughed. They said, this is Appalachia. We don't get the weekend off. And, they weren't angry about that. They weren't begrudging. They were just like the people I grew up with, right? You have a flood come through and tear up your property, and it's Saturday. It doesn't matter that it's Saturday. You have work to do. And all of these folks with a smile on their face were back at work, rocking out and hanging drywall and chopping firewood and everything on that Saturday morning by 9 a.m. And nobody seemed to be unhappy or complaining about that. And furthermore, I think they're people who really appreciated the beauty of the wilderness they get to live in, and they would talk about that. They would look around and they would say, yeah, we got hard work to do, but look at where we get to live. So I would say from the standpoint of the people and the facilities, I had a really good stay at Standing Bear. And I think folks should give them a break and go in there and help them out a little bit and stay there, as long as you're not expecting a 3-star hotel. If you want to stay in a 3-star hotel with a little breakfast area downstairs in the morning with 4 different kinds of hot meals, and you want to live in where you can walk to the McDonald's, you want to stay at a place like that on your town day, then go have a town day. Get a shuttle ride into Newport. They have places in there that you can stay that are like that. But as far as an Appalachian Trail hostel goes, Standing Bear is a fine place to stay, and honestly, I think the bonus is it was got to be the least expensive fee I've ever paid on the Appalachian Trail for a private room for one night was like $40. And even the resupply was affordable and everything else. So, you know, there are plenty of times when I spend more money than that, and I stay in a nicer hotel. But in terms of the people that I met and the quality of the bed that I was on and the accommodations and all that, I actually enjoyed my time at Standing Bear quite a bit. So I guess this is my thank you and my endorsement of Standing Bear, and my recognition that it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I found it to be a very solid, authentic, kind place to spend an evening. So this is, I guess, my thank you to the folks at Standing Bear for showing me a good time and getting me up to Hot Springs safely.